Hi, I'm Clay. What's your name? Oh, what do you do for a living? Where are you from? How's the weather? Okay, let's do something cool. Hey guys, before we get into the video, I want you to hit subscribe right here, so I guess my ego is just better. Okay, so you're watching this video probably because you're an introvert. You may not think that I'm an introvert based off these videos, but I am 100% an introvert. You might be thinking, I'm an introvert, but like I also want to start a business, or I am a business owner, so how do I get more sales as an introvert because I'm timid or whatever, blah, 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 blah. Let me tell you, after 15 years of being in sales and owning businesses as an introvert, I have mastered how to network and do sales as an introvert. So I'm going to show you in this video the sales for introverts formula. Like 10 years ago, even 5 years ago when I first started my business, I was super, scared of sales because I am an introvert. So let me first clarify what an introvert is and what an extrovert is, because I think a lot of people have, this is a misconception, like introverts are shy, introverts are timid, and I don't think that's it. I think that introverts, it comes down to one thing. There's only one difference between introverts and extroverts, and to me, that's how we get our energy. So, how does an extrovert get their energy? An extrovert gets their energy by being around people. That's their natural habitat. When they're around people, that means their energy level is up. You know what brings their energy level down? Is when they gotta be stuck at home, like at COVID, like quarantine for 14 days or whatever. That's what brings their energy down and exhausts them. But introverts are the opposite. For me, for example, if I gotta go and put my game face on at a networking event or some conference or whatever, that is totally draining my energy. To people interacting with me, I'm not an introvert. It doesn't look like I'm an introvert on the front cover, but internally, my energy is being drained. And by the end of the event or the end of the conference or wherever I'm at, whenever I go home, I'm exhausted and I gotta recharge for like a day before I gotta go back out and see people. That's why these videos freaking drain me. So that's the difference between an introvert and an extrovert. So please don't think that people who say they're an introvert but they're not shy or timid, that's not the same thing. Being shy and timid is being shy and timid. That's not an introvert. That doesn't equal the same thing. So I just want to clarify that because that's a pet peeve of mine. So let's get into the meat of the video, and that is, how do you network with people as an introvert? So let me first start off. If you're going to a networking event by yourself, that can be totally intimidating. So recommendation number one, bring a friend. Bring a friend, because it is a lot less scary if you bring somebody with you. What I would try to do, if you can, is try to separate your ways while you're there. But I get it. If you want to stay together, just make sure you don't stick with the same crowd the entire time that you're networking with people. Go meet some new people, and then go over to another group, meet some new people, go over to another group, meet some new people. You can buddy up. If you can separate it, that's great. You might have to work your way towards that. But if you want to buddy up and tackle people one at a time, that's fine. All right, so let's just assume that you go by yourself. So to me, the most awkward thing at a networking event is you go to this place that has lots of people, and you see all these little huddles, right? There's these little huddles, these little small groups of people, 4 or 5 people here, 2 to 3 people here, another 4 or 5 people here. You don't know anybody there. So to me, that's the most awkward part of a networking event as an introvert, is okay, how do I insert my way into one of these cliques or groups or whatever? So I got a recommendation there. There's basically 2 ways you can do this. One, they're both great. So here's one way, is instead of awkwardly standing there, you know what I'm talking about, you're in a little group, and then some random person just slowly starts hovering around the group, and you're all thinking, I know what you're all thinking. You're thinking the same thing. You're like, who the hell is this guy just standing there trying to join our group and not say anything? That's the most awkward thing for everybody. So it's awkward for you as the awkward guy or girl, and it's awkward for the group. So don't just slowly hover your way around a group hoping somebody will say something to you, because I wouldn't assume that. It's awkward. Just don't do it. So 2 approaches. You can do 2 approaches this way. You walk up to a group and you compliment somebody. So what do? You say, oh man, I really like that jacket that you got on. Or, man, those are some badass Jordan shoes you got on. Like, that's a really good way of just like going to a group and just like, now all of a sudden you're part of the conversation. You just walk up, you say, man, those are some really cool shoes you got on. Where'd you get them? Like, that's a really non-intrusive way to get yourself into a group. And people love to talk about their stuff, right? They bought something expensive, whether it's a jacket, a purse, some shoes, or whatever. And so when someone asks them about that thing, they love to talk about it. And bam, there's some conversation. All right, so the second way of how you approach a group, this is actually my favorite way because it's a lot more fun. I guess just because I'm more of a jokey person. And so my favorite way is you just walk directly up to a group. You don't slowly hover. You walk directly to the group as if you were walking there on purpose and you just chose the group, right? And you just say, hey, do you mind if I awkwardly butt into this group conversation? And everybody will laugh. That's the most amazing thing. And then all of a sudden they're going to be like, oh, what's your name? Blah, blah, blah. To me, that's a more fun way because it breaks the ice and it just gets you into the group all of a sudden. And what I like about this approach versus the previous approach I just told you about is all of a sudden it now introduces you to the entire group instead of just one person. So the compliment method is perfect for one person. Or if there's like 2 people, like that's a perfect method. If there's like 4 or 5 people, I would do this awkward butt-in method. I don't know what to call it, but that's what I call it. Hey, can I awkwardly butt into this group conversation? Okay, so now you got yourself in the circle, right, of people that you want to talk to. That's just phase 1. The second phase is probably the toughest part. It's like, what do you talk about? As an introvert, you know what? Even as an extrovert, everybody defaults to the same 3 damn questions that everybody doesn't want to talk about. What's your name? Where are you from? What do you do for a living? I guess it's 4 questions. And how's the weather? Like, stay away from those questions. Nobody wants to talk about that, but by default, that's what people say because they don't know what to say. So, here are some suggestions. All right, so if you did the compliment method to get yourself into the group, into the circle, that's a really easy way to continue that conversation, right? And even if you didn't use that method to get yourself into the group, it's a really easy method to start a conversation that has nothing to do with the weather or where you're from or what you do for a living. Just compliment somebody on what they're wearing, and that's it. And let the conversation flow. All right, the second way you can have a conversation and avoid the boring conversations is ask somebody what they do outside of work. What do you do for fun? That's the question that I ask, is like, what do you do for fun when you're not working? That's a brilliant question to ask because it does a couple of things. One, it's a really good way of breaking the ice of like, because you know this person's probably talked about where they're from, what they do for a living, and how's the weather. So what I like about this question is it's totally not normal in a networking situation. And so what I like about it is now this person's probably going to remember you because you asked a different question. And so that's point number 1. Point number 2 is now you get to know this person on a personal level. Who knows? You will probably have more in common with someone, more than you think you would, just by asking questions. Asking them what they do for fun. Who knows? They might do hiking, they might do paddleboarding, they might be big into board games, they might play poker. Like, who knows? Like, how are you gonna know those things if you don't ask? And let me tell you, sales 101, if you connect on a personal level, the chances of you closing that sale, not saying that you need to close it at that point, but the chances of you closing a sale if you connect on a personal level is so much higher. And so if this person you're talking to is your ideal client and you've already connected about paddleboarding, right? If you also paddleboard and that person paddleboards, man, like you don't even have to try to sell them. They're probably just gonna buy from you. All right, a third approach that you can use to avoid the boring weather questions is You can ask, who brought you here? Or who do you know here? What I really like about this question is now they can try to introduce you to people that are also there. So whenever you're talking to this person, they say, oh, who do you know? Oh, yeah, I know the mayor. He happens to be here. Oh, can you introduce me? And that's a brilliant way of connecting yourself to higher level people, but also maybe your ideal clients. You don't know until you ask the question. Okay, so the last question to avoid the boring weather question is you ask about recent events. Like, hey, did you catch the game that happened last night? Or, hey, did you happen to go to this event that was held at the local community center? Like asking those questions, or maybe it's like a recent news event or something. Asking those questions, like that's a really good question because it is a hot topic. It's recent and it's trending, and so people usually it's a pretty safe question. If it's a recent thing, then chances are that person's probably experienced that in some way, and so I think it's a safe question, but it also avoids the weather question. And so if somebody said, hey, did you happen to catch the football game, the Raiders game last night? And what happens if they're a diehard Raider fan? Like, oh man, now you got something in common. That's all you need to talk about for the rest of the night. And now you guys have connected. Now I know what you're saying. Like, what if that person says, oh, I'm not really a football fan? Well, here's my last tip for you. And this applies to every single tip that I've given you on this video, is keep asking questions. So if they say, oh, I'm not really into football, say, oh, are you into sports at all? And if they say, yeah, well, what kind of sports? Are you into baseball? Are you into soccer? Whatever. And if they say no, like, oh, I'm not really into sports. Oh, what do you do for fun? So keep asking questions to keep the conversation going. And you know what you're gonna look like to the other person? You're gonna be the best conversational person in their mind because you're asking them questions and they just talk about themselves. And if there's anything people love to do, they love talking about themselves.